It was a crisp autumn evening when I first arrived in Glenwood, a sleepy little town tucked away between rolling hills, the kind of place you pass through without ever noticing. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, and the golden light faded into an eerie blue shadow as I drove down the narrow, winding road. Glenwood was the kind of town that didn't seem to be in a hurry to get anywhere. Its streets were lined with old houses, their once vibrant paint chipped and peeling. The town square was dotted with stores that looked like they hadn't seen a customer in years. I hadn't planned to stop. My car had broken down on the outskirts, and I thought it'd be a good idea to find somewhere to stay for the night before continuing my journey the next morning. It was too late to go back home, too dark to drive anywhere further, so I pulled into the gas station at the edge of town. The place looked abandoned, with cracked windows and a flickering neon sign that read Glenwood Station. The attendant, a thin old man with a long white beard, greeted me from behind the counter, his face weathered like the town itself. He looked me up and down with those piercing eyes, like he knew something I didn't. "You need a place to stay?" he asked, his voice raspy, almost a whisper. "Yeah, my car's broken down. Couldn't make it any further tonight." He gave a slow nod, his eyes never leaving mine. "You can stay at the old inn. It's a few blocks down, right on Main. Just tell Clara I sent you." "Thanks, I appreciate it." As I left the station, I could feel the weight of the place pressing in on me. The town felt wrong, like it was hiding something. But I didn't think much of it at the time. After all, it was just a town, and people had their ways. I didn't have time to dwell on it. I was tired, and I just wanted somewhere to sleep. The walk to the inn wasn't long, but the streets felt different now, darker, more isolated. It was as if the whole town was asleep, and I was the only one awake. The buildings loomed above me, like silent giants, their windows empty and staring. The inn was exactly how I expected it to be. Old, dusty, and creaky, but welcoming in its own way. The lobby smelled of stale wood and faint perfume. Behind the desk was a woman who looked to be in her late 40s, with graying hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When I told her the old man from the gas station had sent me, she nodded and handed me a key. "Room 7. It's on the second floor," she said, her voice soft, almost too soft. "There's a storm coming, so you might want to stay in tonight." I didn't argue. I took the key and made my way up the staircase. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, and the walls were lined with old portraits of people I didn't recognize. They all had the same strange expression, vacant, almost as if they were trapped in the frame. I reached my room, and as I opened the door, a cold gust of wind swept through the hallway, making the door slam behind me. I quickly locked it, feeling a chill run down my spine. The room was small but cozy, with a worn-out bed and a dresser covered in dust. There was a small window that overlooked the town square, but the view was blocked by thick curtains. I didn't feel like opening them anyway. I dropped my bag on the bed and sat down, trying to shake off the unease I felt. The town had started to feel like a place I didn't belong, like it was watching me. But I didn't let that stop me. I had no other choice but to rest for the night. As I lay there, the wind picked up outside, rattling the windows. The storm was coming, just like the woman had said. The thunder rumbled in the distance, and the rain began to patter against the glass. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the strange feeling that seemed to seep into the room with every gust of wind. But then, I heard it. A faint whisper, almost like someone calling my name. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was silent except for the storm outside. Maybe it was just the wind, but the whisper felt too real, too deliberate. I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching me. I tried to brush it off, just the wind, I thought, but I couldn't ignore the unease crawling up my spine. I stood up and walked to the window, cautiously drawing the curtains apart to look outside. The town square was bathed in the dim glow of the street lamps, the rain falling in sheets, turning the cobblestones into a slick, wet surface. The empty streets seemed to stretch forever, almost mocking the stillness around me. Nothing unusual, no one in sight. But then, something caught my eye. At the far end of the square, near the old church, there was a figure standing under the awning, barely visible through the rain. I squinted, trying to make out any details, but it was too far away, just a silhouette, tall and unmoving. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Why was someone standing out there in the middle of a storm? The figure didn't move, didn't flinch. I watched it for what felt like an eternity before the rain blurred my vision and I let the curtains fall back into place. It was probably nothing, maybe a local seeking shelter from the storm, though the stillness of it felt off. I turned away from the window, still unsettled, and sat back on the bed. The air in the room was thick, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I glanced at the clock. Midnight. Just a few more hours and I'd leave. The storm would pass by morning and I could head out. But then came the noise again, a soft rustle from somewhere in the hallway. I shot up, straining to listen. It wasn't the wind. This was something else, something that didn't belong. The sounds of creaking footsteps, slow, deliberate. They weren't the kind of noises a hotel should make. My stomach twisted as I stood frozen, trying to make sense of it. Was someone walking around in the halls at this hour? I moved cautiously toward the door, my pulse racing. I pressed my ear against the cold wood, trying to catch any hint of what was happening outside. The footsteps stopped abruptly, followed by a soft thud. Something heavy had been dropped, or maybe it was the sound of a door closing. I couldn't tell. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Every instinct told me to stay in the room, to lock myself in and pretend none of this was happening. But curiosity gnawed at me. What was going on in this place? I opened the door just a crack, peering out into the dim hallway. The flickering light from the chandelier above cast eerie shadows across the floor. The hall stretched in both directions, empty except for the paintings on the walls, all of them staring at me with hollow eyes. I stepped out, my heart thudding in my chest. The air smelled damp, thick with the scent of mildew. There was no sign of anyone, no footsteps, no rustling. The silence was suffocating. I hesitated, looking down the hallway to the left, then to the right. My only option was to check the source of the noise. With one last glance over my shoulder, I started down the hallway toward the staircase that led to the lobby. My footsteps echoed loudly in the empty corridor, and every creak of the floorboards under my feet made my skin crawl. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard something that made my blood run cold, a low, guttural growl, followed by a soft, chilling laugh. I froze mid-step. The sound had come from below, from the lobby. It was almost as if someone or something was waiting for me. I took a deep breath and, against every instinct in my body, descended the stairs slowly. The lobby was dimly lit, the only source of light being the flickering gas lamps along the walls. The old desk sat untouched, the bell still lying there in silence. But the atmosphere had changed. It felt heavier, as if the entire building was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. I scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place, but that was when I saw it. At the far end of the room, in the corner near the staircase, was the figure again, but this time I could make out more details. It was a woman standing with her back to me, her long black hair hanging down to her waist. She was dressed in an old-fashioned gown that looked out of place, like something from a bygone era. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. The woman's head slowly turned, revealing a pale, lifeless face with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. Her lips parted, but instead of words, there was only the sound of a soft, mournful wail, a cry that echoed through the empty halls, sending a chill deep into my bones. I backed away, my breath quickening, my pulse racing. There was no way I was staying here another minute. I turned and ran back towards the staircase, but before I could make it up, I heard the voice again. It was the woman, but this time it wasn't a cry. It was calling my name. I froze at the sound of my name. It echoed through the lobby, low and drawn out, like a whisper caught in the wind. My skin prickled with cold, my legs threatening to give out beneath me. The air around me seemed to thicken, and the shadows in the corners of the room began to stretch toward me, as if they were alive. The woman's hollow eyes never left me. I could feel her gaze, even though I was facing the staircase, my heart pounding in my ears. The voice, it wasn't just a whisper. It was as if the entire room was filled with it, vibrating in my chest, shaking me to my core. "Come here," the voice said again, this time a little louder, more insistent. The woman didn't move, but her presence seemed to grow, filling the room. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry, and without thinking, I started to ascend the stairs. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I forced them to move, one step after another. I couldn't turn around, not now. If I did, I wasn't sure I'd be able to handle what I might see. Halfway up, I heard the woman's voice again, this time closer, almost at my ear. "You can't leave," she whispered. I spun around, my heart in my throat, but the lobby was empty. The woman was gone. I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified, but the sensation of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the corners of my vision, didn't go away. My body was on high alert, every instinct telling me to run, but I couldn't seem to move fast enough. The stairs creaked under my weight, and the farther I climbed, the more suffocating the silence became. When I reached the second floor, I rushed back to my room. My hand shook as I turned the key in the lock, and I quickly shut the door behind me. I didn't care how it looked. I didn't care if it seemed like I was overreacting. I needed to be inside, away from whatever was lurking in this place. I collapsed onto the bed, my chest rising and falling with each frantic breath. The rain was still pounding outside, the storm now a full-blown downpour. It was like the weather had matched the atmosphere inside the inn, a perfect storm of dread and fear. For a few moments, I just sat there, staring at the door, waiting for the next sound, the next whisper, but nothing came. The silence was almost worse than the noise. At least the noise had a direction. It had a source. Then I heard it, a soft knock at the door. My blood ran cold. It wasn't the kind of knock that came from the wind or the storm. This was deliberate, slow, one knock at a time. I didn't move. I couldn't. The room felt like it was closing in on me. "Who is it?" I managed to croak out, my voice trembling. No response, just silence, followed by another knock. I forced myself to stand. My legs shook beneath me as I moved toward the door. I reached for the knob, but my hand hesitated just before it touched it. What if it was the woman? What if it was something worse? I took a deep breath and threw open the door. Empty. No one was there. But there, on the floor, was a small, crumpled piece of paper. I picked it up with trembling fingers, my mind racing. What kind of sick joke was this? I unfolded the paper slowly, my eyes scanning the words. "She's waiting for you in the basement. Come down, or she'll find you." My stomach twisted. The basement. What the hell was going on here? I glanced down the hallway. No one was in sight, but I could feel it again, the same feeling I had earlier, the sensation of being watched. My skin crawled. I couldn't just ignore this. I couldn't pretend I wasn't in danger. I had to find out what was going on. With no other choice, I made my way down the stairs again, my feet heavy with dread. The lobby was still empty, the eerie silence only broken by the sound of my footsteps. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, my heart pounding. There was a door near the back, a small wooden door that looked like it hadn't been used in years. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, barely noticeable in the dim light. That was the door, the basement. I walked toward it slowly, each step a battle against the instinct to run. I reached for the handle and turned it, the door creaking open with a loud groan. The air that hit me was cold, musty, and thick with the smell of mold. I descended the stairs carefully, the wooden steps groaning beneath me. The basement was dark, save for a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting a dim, flickering light. The walls were lined with old, forgotten furniture, chairs, a broken table, and piles of what looked like old, rotting clothes. It was exactly the kind of basement you'd expect to find in an old inn, abandoned and neglected for years. But something was wrong. There was a feeling in the air, a heaviness that made it hard to breathe. And there, in the far corner of the basement, was a small figure sitting in the dark, hunched over. It was the woman again, but this time, her back was to me. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, my breath caught in my throat. The woman, the figure, was sitting in the far corner of the basement, hunched over like she was waiting for me. The flickering light barely illuminated her, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. I didn't know what to do. My mind screamed for me to turn around, to flee back up the stairs and lock myself in my room. But my legs wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, staring at her. The air in the basement felt thick, almost suffocating, like the weight of the house itself was pressing in on me. The woman didn't turn around. She just sat there, still, motionless. My eyes darted to the floor next to her. There were strange markings, like symbols drawn in chalk, smeared and faded. And in the dim light, I thought I saw something else. A small pile of bones, half hidden beneath the tattered cloth. My mind raced. What the hell was going on here? I took a step forward, and the woman's head snapped around. Her eyes were wide, almost bulging from her face. Her mouth stretched into a grotesque, unnatural smile, and she let out a low, rasping laugh that sent chills down my spine. "You shouldn't have come down here," she whispered, her voice like a dry, crackling leaf in the wind. "You shouldn't have followed me." I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came out. My body felt paralyzed, as though the very air around me was draining the strength from my limbs. She stood up slowly, unnaturally, her joints cracking with each movement. The shadows around her seemed to stretch and twist, almost as if they were alive, bending toward me, pulling me closer to her. And then, in a voice that wasn't hers, I heard the words again, but this time louder, more insistent. "She's waiting for you." I backed away, my mind racing. Who was she talking about? What did she mean? My heart thudded in my chest as I turned and ran back toward the stairs, my feet pounding the floor in panic. But when I reached the top, I stopped dead in my tracks. The door at the top of the stairs had changed. It was no longer the plain wooden door I had come through earlier. Now, it was adorned with the same strange symbols I had seen in the basement. They were etched into the wood, glowing faintly in the dim light, pulsing with a sickly energy. I turned to look back at the woman, but she was gone. The basement was empty again. It was like she had never been there. I shoved the door open, my heart in my throat, and ran back to my room, slamming the door behind me. I could hear the faint sound of footsteps again, but this time they weren't coming from the hallway. They were coming from within the walls, crawling up toward the ceiling. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't make sense of any of this. I stumbled toward the window, pulling the curtains open again, desperate for some kind of reality to anchor me. But when I looked outside, I saw nothing but darkness. No storm, no rain, just an endless void stretching out before me. And then the whisper came again, this time from within my own mind. "You can't escape. She's already inside you." My heart stopped. I rushed to the door, pulling at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The lock was stuck. My palms were slick with sweat as I yanked harder, but the door didn't move an inch. And that's when I saw it. A shadow, creeping along the floor, sliding toward me, growing larger with every passing second. I could hear it now, the sound of breathing, slow and shallow, like something in the room with me, something waiting. I turned to face the room, and that's when I saw it, an outline in the corner, just barely visible in the dark. The woman. Her face was pressed up against the wall, her fingers digging into the cracks as if she were trying to crawl out of the shadows. Her mouth opened, wider than it should have, stretching impossibly, until she let out a terrible scream, a sound so loud it seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. I stumbled backward, my mind screaming at me to run, but I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move. My body was frozen in place, like I was rooted to the floor. She stood up slowly, unnaturally, her joints cracking with each movement. The shadows around her seemed to stretch and twist, almost as if they were alive, bending toward me, pulling me closer to her. And then, in a voice that wasn't hers, I heard the words again, but this time louder, more insistent. "She's waiting for you." The door behind me suddenly burst open, and I was thrown across the room, landing hard on the floor. My vision blurred, my heart raced, and I struggled to push myself up. But when I looked up, I didn't see the woman anymore. Instead, I saw the old man at the gas station, standing in the doorway, his eyes wide with terror. "No, you shouldn't have come," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You've awakened her."
I could barely process what I had just heard. The old man's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I struggled to get to my feet, my mind still spinning from the terrifying sight of the woman, whatever she was. But the man stood there, frozen in place, his hands trembling as he gripped the doorframe, his eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "She's not what you think. She's not human." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that seemed to cloud my mind. "What do you mean? Who is she? What's happening here?" The old man's face twisted with grief, his gaze shifting to the corner of the room, to the dark shape that had just vanished into the shadows. He seemed to be seeing something I couldn't. His lips quivered, and he took a shaky step forward. "Glenwood," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "is built on a curse. You don't understand. We all thought we could escape it, but it's here. It's always been here." I took a hesitant step toward him, my hands clammy, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you talking about? What's going on in this town?" The old man looked at me, his eyes hollow, as though he had lived through something so terrible that he no longer cared for his own life. "There's something in this town, something old, something ancient. It feeds on fear, on the desperation of those who are trapped here. People have been coming to Glenwood for years, looking for something, hoping to find peace, but they never leave." My stomach twisted with dread. "What do you mean they never leave?" "The curse," he whispered. "It doesn't let them. It takes them, consumes them. And those who remain, they're not who they were. They become like her, like them." I stared at him, unable to fully grasp what he was saying. "Who? What are you talking about?" He shuddered, his gaze flickering toward the dark corner again, where the woman had been. "The spirits, the ones who were taken, they stay, waiting for new blood, and it's never enough." I felt my knees buckle as the weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. I looked back at the door, at the hallway beyond, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the man's face. His expression was haunted, as if he had seen the horror up close for too long. You have to leave," he gasped, his voice rising in panic. "You can't stay here. No one who stays here ever truly leaves. You're already marked." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate. The walls trembled, and I could feel the vibrations in the air, like the whole house was alive, moving. The old man's eyes widened in terror. "She's here! She's finally come for you!" I turned toward the sound, my mind screaming at me to run, to leave, to get out of this cursed place. But before I could take another step, the door slammed shut and the room was plunged into darkness. The faint light from the hallway flickered and died, leaving me in complete blackness. The air felt thick, suffocating, and I could hear the sound of breathing again, slow, measured, right behind me. A cold chill ran down my spine as I turned, but the darkness was too complete and I couldn't see a thing. And then came the whisper, so close it felt like it was inside my head. "You can't run." I gasped and spun around, my heart hammering in my chest. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't open. It felt as if the walls were closing in on me, squeezing the very life out of the air. The whisper came again, louder this time, echoing through my skull. "You can't escape." I slammed my shoulder into the door, desperate to break it open, but the force behind it was overwhelming. The entire building seemed to be shaking, groaning under the weight of something unseen. And then I heard the laughter. It wasn't the woman's laughter this time. It was deeper, more guttural, like something that had been twisted and broken. It came from everywhere, reverberating off the walls, bouncing around the room, drowning out everything else. I turned, searching for some kind of escape, but the room was closing in on me, the corners growing darker, darker still. The light from the hallway seemed to shrink, as if being sucked into the darkness that was creeping in from all sides. Suddenly, the floor beneath me cracked, and a deep rumbling growl echoed from below. The sound of something massive, something alive, something ancient was coming from the depths of the house. The growl was followed by a low, wheezing voice. You belong to me now. The walls crumbled again, and a blinding light flashed from the corner of the room, lighting up the shadowy figure of the woman, the thing standing there, her eyes burning like embers. I screamed, my voice lost in the laughter and the growls, but the sound was smothered, swallowed by the darkness. I ran again, desperately, blindly, and then I felt it, a hand, cold and clammy, brushing against my arm. I looked down, but I saw nothing, nothing at all. The grip tightened, and I felt a coldness surge through me, freezing my very bones. You will never leave Glenwood. The last thing I remember was falling to the ground, the laughter still echoing in my ears, and the crushing weight of the darkness pulling me under. I don't know how long I was out. It could have been minutes, hours, or even days. Time felt like it had lost all meaning, stretched thin and warped by the darkness that surrounded me. When I finally regained consciousness, I was lying on cold, damp stone. My head was throbbing, and every part of my body felt heavy, like I had been dragged through a nightmare. I tried to move, but my limbs refused to obey. It was as if something was holding me down, pressing me into the ground. Panic surged through me. Where am I? My eyes opened, and for the first time I could see a sliver of light, a faint glow coming from above. The air was thick with a musty smell, and the walls around me were rough, jagged stone. I was in a cellar, deeper than the basement, deeper than anything I had seen before. The walls were lined with ancient symbols, etched into the stone like a map of some forgotten ritual. I tried to sit up, but something in my chest burned, as if an invisible force were weighing me down. I couldn't breathe properly. My throat tightened, my body stiffened with every breath. That's when I heard it, a soft, dripping noise. The sound was rhythmic, like water slowly falling into a puddle. I turned my head toward the source, but the shadows swallowed everything in their grasp. The air was too thick to see clearly, yet I could hear the noise getting closer, closer, like something or someone was coming toward me. The whisper came again, this time not from behind me, but all around me, as if the very walls were speaking. You've awakened her. Now you belong to the curse. I couldn't tell if the voice was real or if it was my own mind playing tricks on me, but the suffocating weight of it, the way it pressed into my chest, felt too real to ignore. In the dim light, I could make out the shape of a figure standing just out of reach, just beyond the edge of what little light there was. The air seemed to freeze as the figure took a step forward. The woman, the one from the inn, the one from the basement. She stood motionless, her face now a grotesque mask of flesh, as though her features had been twisted into something other, something wrong. Her lips parted, and her voice, no, her voice rang in my head again. You cannot escape. She will never let you leave. I tried to scream, to fight, but no sound came out. My voice was trapped inside me, my body powerless against the force that held me down. I looked around desperately, searching for anything that could help me get out of here. But the more I looked, the more I realized there was nowhere to run. This was a place of binding, a place of the forgotten, where the past and the present had bled into one, and where no one who entered could leave. The woman took another step forward, and her eyes, those hollow eyes, glowed in the dark like two orbs of fire. She reached out with a long, twisted hand, her fingers elongating, stretching impossibly toward me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe.
And then, just as her fingers brushed against my skin, I felt a sudden jolt, like electricity coursing through my veins. Pain shot through my body, sharp and blinding. It was as if my very soul was being torn from me, pulled into the dark, twisted corners of the house that seemed to stretch forever. "You belong to her now." The words were no longer a whisper. They were a roar in my mind. The force pulling me in grew stronger, and I felt my consciousness begin to fade, like the light at the end of a tunnel, slowly slipping away. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me completely was the woman's face, smiling, her eyes glowing with something dark, something ancient. When I woke up again, I was back in the inn, lying on the bed in the same room I had been staying in earlier. I gasped, sitting up too quickly, my head spinning. The room was exactly the same as it had been before, dusty, quiet, and unchanged. The storm outside had stopped, leaving only the faint sounds of rain tapping on the window. But something was different. There was a weight in the air, a presence that wasn't there before. I looked around, but the room was empty. The door was still locked. The shadows in the corners seemed to move, as if they were alive, waiting for me to make a mistake. I stood up, my legs shaking as I approached the door. My mind raced. Had it all been a dream? Had it all been in my head? I touched the doorknob, and when I turned it, it opened without resistance. The hallway outside was still and silent. I stepped into it, my heart hammering in my chest. I was afraid to look back, afraid that if I did, I'd see her, them standing in the corner, waiting for me to fall. But there was no one. The hallway was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I moved quickly toward the stairs, but the moment my foot touched the first step, I froze. The woman's voice was in my head again, clear as day. "You can't leave." I turned, my breath catching in my throat. The hallway was empty, but I could feel her presence, lurking just beyond the edge of my sight. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. I had to get out. I ran down the stairs, my footsteps pounding against the floor, my heart racing as I reached the door to the outside. I fumbled with the lock, but when the door finally opened, I gasped. The world outside was no longer the same. Glenwood was not the sleepy, abandoned town I had driven into. It was a twisted reflection of itself, dark, broken, like something was rotting beneath the surface. The streets were empty, but the shadows were longer, deeper, as if they were reaching for me. And standing at the edge of the street, just before the road stretched into the blackened horizon, was the woman. Her smile was wide, too wide. "You can't leave," she whispered again, but this time it was more than a warning. It was a promise. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the woman as she stood motionless in the street. Her smile was wide, too wide. Her eyes burned with a hollow intensity, and her presence felt like it was suffocating the very air around me. Every instinct screamed for me to turn around, to slam the door shut and never look back. But my feet were glued to the ground. I couldn't move. It was as if she was pulling me in, as if her very gaze had become a force too powerful to escape. "You can't leave," she repeated, her voice a low whisper that seemed to echo in my mind. The words weren't just spoken, they breathed into my very soul, wrapping around me like chains. I stumbled backward, still unable to tear my eyes away from her. The world outside had changed, twisted into something unnatural. The streetlights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows on the ground. The houses that had once seemed abandoned now looked decayed, dilapidated, as though the entire town had aged centuries in the span of a few moments. I felt the doorframe behind me, cold against my back. I needed to get out, to run, but every fiber of my being felt heavy. The curse of Glenwood wasn't just in the buildings or the streets. It was in the very air, in the very blood of the place. "Why are you doing this?" I managed to croak, my voice barely louder than the breeze outside. The woman tilted her head, that sickening smile still plastered across her face. "It's not me, child. You're the one who came here. You woke her up, and now you'll stay forever." I stumbled hard, my mind racing. "Who are you talking about? Who is she?" The woman's expression darkened, her smile twisting into something darker, more malevolent. "She's the one who controls this town. She's the one who calls those who wander, those who get too close. You thought you could escape her, but she's been waiting for you." I backed away from the door, my chest tightening with panic. I had to escape, but how? The town wasn't just a place, it was a trap. "You're not the first," the woman continued, her voice growing softer, "and you won't be the last. She takes us all, one by one, piece by piece. We're all part of her now." I was beginning to understand. The people of this town, the ones who had disappeared, the ones who stayed, they were all part of it. They were her sacrifice, her vessels, and now I was going to join them. I could feel it in my bones, the weight of the curse settling in, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I turned away from the woman, desperate to find any escape, but the door behind me slammed shut with a deafening bang. The light from the hallway flickered and died, leaving me in complete darkness. The only sound was the pounding of my own heart, the thundering rush of blood in my ears. "No, no, no!" I cried, my voice desperate. I pounded on the door, my fists bruising against the wood, but it wouldn't open. The walls were closing in, the air growing heavier with every passing second. From the corner of the room, I heard the sound of slow, deliberate steps. "You should have listened," a voice rasped. It wasn't the woman's voice this time. It was deeper, darker, more monstrous. I turned toward the source of the sound, my body trembling, but there was nothing except the darkness that seemed to swallow everything whole. Then the laughter came again. It started as a low chuckle, then grew into a chorus of voices, dozens, hundreds, all laughing together, all echoing in the dark. I collapsed to my knees, clutching my head, trying to block out the sound, but it was everywhere. The ground beneath me began to shift, the room seemed to tilt, and the walls groaned like they were alive. I felt something cold, something vile crawl across my skin, as if the very house itself was reaching out to claim me. And then I saw her again, the one, standing at the edge of the room. Her eyes were glowing, burning with an unnatural fire. Her mouth was open wide, and I could see her teeth, jagged and sharp, as though she had been waiting for this moment for centuries. "Now it's your turn," she whispered. "Now you will join us." I could feel the pull, the tug in my chest, like I was being drawn towards her, like I was being dragged into the void. I tried to fight it, but the force was overwhelming. My body moved against my will, my legs carrying me towards her, towards the darkness that waited. "You're already ours," she whispered. "You will never leave. None of us do." With every step I took, I could feel the weight of the curse settling over me, wrapping around me, binding me to this place. I reached out for the door, but it was too late. The shadows consumed me, wrapping around my body like chains. And then I understood. The town wasn't just cursed, it was alive, a living entity, feeding on the fear and despair of those who entered. It didn't just take you, it changed you. And once you were in, once the curse had you, there was no escaping.